Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a drama and horror film called Shapeless. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. It's a regular night for the aspiring singer Ivy, who's performing with her band, the Beatwood Pack. Although the bar is almost empty, she perseveres alongside her bandmates Charles, the drummer, Maggie, the pianist, and Oscar, the bassist. Thankfully, even when the place isn't packed, they still get paid, much to Oscar's surprise. When Addie, the barkeeper, invites Ivy out for drinks, she refuses. Then Maggie also invites her for a fun night at a karaoke bar, but she doesn't join her either. Instead, she hangs out with Oscar and walks home with him, but she still declines when he invites her for drinks. As it turns out, Ivy has plans of her own. She goes to a much classier bar called the Orchid Lounge to watch her favorite lounge singer, Marion, and she watches her with admiration. When Ivy gets home, she practices the same song performed by Marion. While playing the guitar, she suddenly sees her fingers morph together, but her mind is simply playing tricks on her. She then gets a bag of cereal from her pantry, and at first, she takes individual pieces and restricts herself. However, she eventually gives in and just pours the entire bag into a bowl, only to throw up afterward. Before she goes to bed, she obsessively measures her body. The next morning, Ivy goes to her dry cleaning job. Her boss compliments her for the good work, but reminds her not to be late next time. Then, while she sits at the reception desk, she keeps looking at the vending machine, but she tries her best not to eye the snacks. After work, she goes to the grocery store and buys many snacks. Ivy just wants to be quick in getting what she needs, but ends up engaging in small talk with a cashier, who keeps commenting on her purchases and telling her how lucky she is that she's thin despite eating junk food. Bothered, Ivy lies and says that she's throwing a party. She can't even wait until she gets home to snack on the cookies, already going through the whole box in her car, but at the same time, feeling a bit embarrassed about binge eating. Ivy's routine continues as usual, going straight to the bar to sing. Afterward, she hangs out with Oscar at her place, but when she wakes up the following day, she's already alone. As Ivy gets ready for work, she observes her body first thing in the morning before eating a small portion of Paleo Bar. She then slices a few inches at a time to eat before packing the rest into a container, but she ends up not being able to stop herself and takes another bite before throwing the last piece in the trash. Ivy paces around her place, and in the end, she eats the last piece of snack from the trash can. At work, Ivy struggles to finish her salad. Then, when a customer comes by eating fast food, Ivy gives up on the salad and ends up buying a bunch of snacks from the vending machine. That night, Ivy returns to the Orchid Lounge. After spending a bit of time at the bar, a man named Dylan suddenly talks to her when she's about to leave, the same person who watched her sing the other night in her workplace and is the owner of Orchid Lounge. He shows interest in her skills and gives her a business card, inviting her to sing in his bar for a better paycheck. Although she's getting a good offer, her eyes focus on the man's mouth when he starts eating something. She then looks over to the bar's mirror and sees a mouth on her cheek, which she immediately covers. As Ivy leaves, she can't help but look at everyone eating their food, but she manages to head home and persevere, vomiting as soon as she gets to the bathroom. During band practice, Ivy gives her bandmates the St. James music sheet, the same song she watched Marion sing a few nights prior. Even during work, she keeps practicing the song repeatedly. When Ivy gets to her usual gig, she's surprised by the sudden influx of people, making Oscar feel nervous because they've never had a crowd that big before. On the other hand, Ivy feels happy that there were people cheering for them when they finished performing. The band celebrates with a round of drinks, but Ivy refuses to drink, using the excuse that she's taking care of her instrument, her voice. She chooses to eat some fries instead, but when the food gets a little bit too much for her, she asks for a shot. When everyone finishes, Ivy takes the remaining fries with her. They then transfer to a livelier club to have fun and let loose. Ivy joins in on the drinking and partying, but later notices that her ring finger is swollen. She goes to the bathroom, seeing that her finger is fine, and she starts to obsess over her image once more. Oscar invites Ivy to hang out somewhere else, so they sit together in a garden near Oscar's place and sing. The two get closer, with Oscar even calling Ivy beautiful. However, Ivy suddenly excuses herself and goes inside Oscar's home to get a box of snacks from the pantry before locking herself in the bathroom. She fervently starts eating and checks on her body, seeing the skin on her thigh crack open. Oscar knocks with concern, but Ivy says she's just peeing and sends Oscar away as she kept snacking, still seeing cracks on her skin. Afterward, she tries throwing up everything she just ate, but stops when she hears Oscar. Then, when Ivy goes outside, she tells Oscar that she needs to go home because she isn't feeling well. The following day, Ivy just stares at her Paleo bars and ends up eating candy instead. Then her boss calls her over to his office at work. making her feel a bit nervous. However, her boss talks about giving her a raise if she improves her time management. When Ivy arrives at the bar for practice, she sees Addie singing St. James with her band. She immediately feels threatened, but just shrugs it off to practice. However, she isn't in her best condition as her voice keeps breaking every now and then. When she gets home, she feels upset about her poor performance during practice and tries to comfort herself by binge eating. She takes out all of her snacks, sits down on the floor, and eats them all simultaneously, but immediately vomits after. A special day comes for the band when they land a wedding gig. While her bandmates are already at the venue, Ivy struggles to find something to wear after staining her blouse and instead shows up with a hoodie over her outfit, not looking the greatest. She stalls for a bit before joining her group, who's not so happy about her appearance. But what's even worse is that she repeatedly messes up the song for the married couple's first dance because her voice keeps breaking. Ivy then ends up changing the song's pitch because she can't hit the notes, confusing her band. The couple isn't too happy with the song either, so Oscar excuses themselves to check on Ivy. But because of their current predicament, Maggie angrily speaks up, telling Ivy that she needs to leave because she's not doing so well. Although Oscar tries to have her back, Charles agrees that Ivy can't stay, forcing her to leave. Ivy's eating disorder worsens as she continuously suffers from body image issues. She vomits non-stop as fingers grow on her back, and she soon finds herself in a hospital. After some tests, Dr. Neal shows Ivy her laryngoscopy results. Ivy finds out that there are signs of severe damage to her esophagus and larynx, caused by stomach acid corroding tissue from how she forces herself to vomit all the time. Dr. Neal asks her whether she suffers from acid reflux, but Ivy can't confess what she's struggling with and chooses to hide her disorder. Dr. Neal then tells her that she will end up rupturing her esophagus, and while most of the scars are irreversible, vocal rest will stop the swelling, so she advises Ivy to rest her vocal cords for a month, making Ivy cry since it may ruin her career. When Ivy gets back home, she starts throwing all of the snacks that she's hidden all over the place. She disposes of the junk food underneath her bed, and she gets rid of her food supply too. Ivy spends a few minutes just sitting on the floor before pulling herself together and meeting the owner of the Orchid Lounge. Dylan offers her a drink, which she accepts but doesn't drink, saying she needs to take care of her instrument. During their conversation, the man reveals that he's been the one advertising Ivy's performances, which is why they got a good turnout the other night. But the good news doesn't stop there, because he still offers her a spot as a talent at his bar, having the opportunity to get more exposure if she starts singing at Orchid Lounge. Ivy is definitely interested, but when he tells her that she needs to rebrand her name, Ivy, she says they go by the name the Beatwood Pack. However, the man confesses that he's only looking for a singer and not a band. Ivy goes to see Oscar, who's worried about her, even telling her that she can take a break and Addie can take over her place. However, she immediately gets defensive and tells him that she doesn't need to rest. Ivy then starts to break down, feeling unconfident about her skills as a singer, so Oscar comforts her. The two eventually make out, and Oscar feels hesitant as Ivy continues to kiss him, saying it can't be like last time. Oscar ends up pushing Ivy away, which makes her angry and leave. Ivy spends time at Orchid Lounge to watch Marion sing again, but this time she feels less like an admirer and becomes more envious. Then while waiting in line outside the ladies' room, she notices an eye growing on her arm, so she walks away to find another restroom. However, she accidentally bumps upon Marion's dressing room. Ivy quickly tries to leave, but Marion introduces herself and engages in small talk with her. Unfortunately, their conversation abruptly ends when Marion is called on stage to sing again. This time, Ivy tunes out Marion's performance and imagines herself in Marion's shoes, performing for the crowd. However, her face is deformed, with teeth growing out of her face. Back in her place, Ivy hallucinates being surrounded by all the wrappers of the junk food she eats, lying in the middle as pieces of plastic and other food containers embrace her. As Ivy comfortably lies there, it only shows her eating disorder slowly consumes her. Ivy continues with her obsession by checking her body measurements and image in the mirror. Then when she goes to her gig, she gets an unpleasant surprise when she sees Addie performing on stage with the band. Realizing that they've replaced her without a word, she walks closer to the stage, and while Oscar looks a bit guilty, the others don't really pay her any mind. Knowing that she has lost her place, Ivy leaves the bar and ends up sleeping with a man despite her worsening body image issues. Her mind conjures up a grotesque image of her own body, her eyes replaced with her mouth, fingers growing all over her back, and eyes placed all over her thighs. Back in her apartment, Ivy lies down under her bed and finds a snack stuck on the mattress. She then hallucinates being in a black void with no one but herself, and after that, she gets up and takes a large tub of ice cream for herself.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.